Anish.
Ted, how are we?
Tá muid an seo
Yeah,
tá mé go agus tusa
Anawa.
anha.
Good.
Cad éon scéil gil chathair.
Nilain scale agam.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into some deep scales.
Oh yeah, we'll probably the pentatonic scales, do you think?
Oh yeah, I like what you did there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So here we are. Harry's just turned 21. Happy birthday. So
Cheers, pal.
welcome to the
Welcome to the real world.
the real
I
world.
heard it all flies in after 21.
the fly honeys. Or
No, as in you get older.
apparently that mostly affects like babies though. Like they age really fast. But then when you get
Nice,
really
yeah.
old, you're like 90. Basically you age very like slowly, and eventually you just live forever.
Okay.
I think.
Getting quite earthy with it already, are we?
Downach.
Yeah,
Ta.
we're getting very down.
So Downach, Lesh and Dina.
Yeah.
Down with the people.
Spot on.
So yeah, welcome to Rendezvous 21.
No way.
Yeah,
That's fitting, isn't it?
it is indeed. So I thought, destiny has conspired to bring us here. So this is about the Irish language, and kind of Harry here's fluent. Leifa, will live too.
Yeah, I'd say, well, yeah, at some stage I definitely had very fluent Irish. I'm a bit broken now at the moment, but I'm sure I can spin some words in,
Yeah.
given the theme of this podcast.
Uh,
We're going to delve deep into our thoughts on the Irish language, why it means so much to both of us.
Yeah.
You coming over and just recently learning it, me growing up with it.
Yeah.
Two words collide.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Different angles on why it's so good, and I want to talk about like the past, the present, and the future of this language. By the way, Irish. You might think, oh yeah, the Irish language. Oh yeah, like how they say, come here till I tell you.
But that's not it, though.
No,
There's a real Irish language.
that would be Hiberno English.
Exactly.
Right. There's a real Irish language, which go listen to like. I remember being like growing up, and like my mum would be like cooking, and she'd have like Sinead O'Connor on,
Yeah.
and it's amazing, good stuff. But then every now and then there'd just be a thing like, Oro shigabahavalya, Oro shigabahavalya, Oro shigabahavalya, Anishur chachtan taure.
Very good, James.
Something like
Yeah, very good, very good.
Yeah.
I like
that.
that.
Got him out.
I like that you got very techie with it there.
Did I?
Yeah.
Techie.
Yeah, you got techie.
Techach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was aiming for. What does
Yeah.
techie mean?
Like you were getting a bit skillful with the Irish there, like that's what
Oh, yeah. Well, I like to think I'm more or less fluent in bullshit. Nah, I'd say
I'd say you'd have at this stage. I would say you have good Berlicus.
Berlicus. What's Berlicus?
That's kind of when you like try to speak Irish directly from English translation.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It like
Berla
if you were to type something
English.
into Google Translate in English, it would come out with Berlicus in Irish.
Right.
But there's a whole different world out there on how to actually speak the language.
Yeah. It's like the structures when you learn one language, like say when I first learned French, then I felt like I what surprised me was like French was very cool, but it shocked me that I was kind of learning English for the first time. Like for the first time, by having 2 points of data, like these two languages, I was able to kind of understand some general principles of
I
languages.
see.
And so I feel like it was like when the astronauts went to the moon, they're all excited for that, and then they like look over their shoulder at the Earth and like, holy shit, this is the most important thing of this whole trip. And so with Irish, it's like realizing there's a whole different logic and structure of expression, which you can use English to get into it at first, I guess, to understand it. But eventually, what I'm trying to do is like get the basics of how to say, oh, I don't understand, nihigam, or tigam, I understand, or like, what do you say, like, connoisseur for blah blah blah. How would you say da da da?
Yeah.
And then from or codis brilishin, what does that mean? And then from within the language, trying to build,
Would you
brain, but you can't translate directly. With
would
most
you
things,
say
yeah.
that like you have a knack for learning different languages, and then would you also say that there is a pattern for learning every language, or do you think the Irish language was this just a different story altogether?
I think you need to be drunk to learn Irish. That's probably the only difference.
Typical stereotype there.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Yeah. Stereotype. This is how Ireland defends itself. Just pretends the alcoholism is a stereotype.
Yeah,
Sure,
okay.
that's not real. Now let's go to the pub.
Yeah,
Just for the one.
Yeah.
100. No, I think there are general like principles for sure, and so I kind of talked about them in another episode a little bit. Like what was that? How to learn how and why to learn a language. But I think yeah, I don't know. I suspect I probably am more made for it than say some people, because I'm just kind of obsessed with words and I like to pick up bits of the language. But I think a lot of it's just like if you have the curiosity. I think that's the main thing. Like I'm just very curious. So.
And what I would say about you, not to blow too much smoke around here, but
yeah, be easy. Gonna start an inferno in my arsehole.
Yeah, well, you definitely have I would say you have some sort of passion from the Irish for learning Irish that I haven't seen in a long time with someone who has just come into the country. In fact, I've never seen someone come into the country and be so driven to learn it.
Yeah. Well, God remark it. Thank you.
Falcha.
So yeah, all right. So before we get into it all, a bit of Kjol.
Why not?
Bit of music.
I'm gonna attempt a bit of harmonica for us. And James is gonna play some chords, yeah?
Yeah.
Why not? Right. My first time really playing harmonica, but you start us off and I'll jump in.
All right.
In the right key there.
I think I think it might be out of key with the harmonica. So yeah, so I'd say how about you play instead?
Okay.
We could see if I can bend it into compliance. You know.
Why not?
All right.
What will I play?
Or you could play some chords and I'll try and freestyle some Irish. Yeah? How about that? So you could put the guitar facing the mic. Yeah.
Okay. Like that?
Tashiga Hanawa. That's very good, yeah.
Okay.
Ooh. Takrisarum. Bechor win Piontir ol Niersagam Mas is Feidzerlam Eiro Ach is some done way Cherinach ach Fear agus bumra of race humanach oh baby posty ta she manish Ganary and boher lad agus gemamish bio ganam sharish. Oh, something like that.
That was alright.
That was right. Alright, we'll put the people out of their misery.
Yeah, let's put the people
Back into their joy.
back into their joy. Okay.
Alright, Harry. So, take it away.
Okay. So, let me have a thought about Irish. I'll tell you something.
Yeah, tell me something.
I definitely think that I was very lucky that my dad, Pat, Great guy.
Great guy.
I was very close to going into a different path altogether with the two schools that I could have gone into as a kid. One school was English and one school was Irish. And a lot of the people from my housing estate would have went straight into the English school. And my dad was walking around and he stumbled into Skulnahi, the school that I went to. And he walked in the door and he seen Irish dancing in the hall. And kids doing Irish dancing, Irish music playing. And he went straight into the principal and he was like, I want my kids in here. So I think that I was very lucky that I was able to get into the Irish for such a young age. From the simple fact that my dad was
obsessed with dance and the power of
just obsessed with the whole Irish thing more so.
Yeah.
And because of that, I played Irish music. I went to all the flackyolds. Just from that one little thought from my dad to just be like, I'm gonna wander in here and have a look, and got me straight into it.
You can just imagine him being like, that's unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. You know, I'm sending my kids here.
Yeah. So that led me into Closhdown.
Right.
And as soon as the first time I met you was in Conor.
Oh, I met you when you were a
kid,
very young
yeah.
fella, but yeah, first time when you remember.
We met in Conor which is basically a pub for Closhdown students to go in and get pissed and speak a bit of Irish.
And for that guy with the big beard to keep some Guinness in his mustache.
Do you remember?
Just talking to me, and I'm like, I barely understand you, but
I was sat down the back of the
rustic
bar,
as
right,
fuck.
and I heard you coming in, and I just thought, I'm gonna listen to see guys. Went straight up to the barman. On facial Guinness. Like you were really trying.
That was
very charming. Yeah, but I definitely have respect for people that don't have Irish, but like they try to say little words here and there. Like I'd often walk into my granddad's house and he wouldn't even think of me. Just say, "Oh, Tomich Gaeilge, just try say the minimal," because I find that stuff so charming when people just come out with little imitations of Irish here and there.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Definitely. Like one thing that really I think got me thinking about Irish is like I lived for 4 years in Montreal, French Canada. Montréal. J'étais à Montréal pour 4 ans.
Don't fucking start. French.
So, yeah, it's just an Irish podcast. Not French. But like it what was so cool about Montreal is like that I realized people swap it. They've like franglais. They like swap in and out of English and French, and it seemed to be just like unconscious, where it was like lightning, the path of lightning zigs down, and apparently I think it's like the water content of the air, and so it's like the path of least resistance for the energy is the way that the electricity hits the ground, and it seems like their mind was just going the path of least resistance to express the idea clearly, and so they would just be like, "J'étais comme, what are you trying to say? C'est trop bizarre, like." Je comprends pas. Like, it's just, what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you said what language are you speaking, I don't think they'd be able to tell you. Like, and so I thought with Irish, like you're saying, people who use a bit of Irish, I think it's really cool because why not? I think it seems, we're going to get into this, but it seems like some of the social expectations around the language, which I think is one of the biggest things limiting the language at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ideas we have
there's
around
There's a lot of Gaeilge snobs.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people that would just be like, "Oh, you can't speak it. What are you trying?" kind of thing.
And
but that's very minimal.
Yeah, but there's enough of them where you only need a small amount like that, and then it fucks up everything. Because say someone who wants to speak Irish will be like, oh, they want to say "Gora mahagat," thank you, like to the the barista, but then they're like, oh, is the barista going to think I'm trying to belittle them?
Yeah.
Or if they don't have, from my point of view, if they're like, oh, you're welcome, I'm like, cool. You don't need to say "Falter roads" back at me, you know?
Yeah.
But they, in their head, they might be like, oh, I couldn't remember the answer. I feel bad. And so some people go, oh, what if they have a bad reaction, even if it doesn't make sense? So there's all these little mind games of like trying to be kind and not be a dick about it.
Exactly, and people really, it's hard to just like drop that and be like, oh fuck, I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I figure like,
And that's the steps we have to take for Irish to be socially acceptable.
Yeah.
To all. And
Yeah.
And like people that are like foreigners that come in
Mhm.
should expect it nearly to hear
Yeah.
a bit.
Well, that's the thing. The funny thing, like I'll say it to Irish people, and some, and that's really cool. I'll meet people who speak a bit, and they'll be like, "Oh, what the hell? You speak Irish? Oh, cool." And we'll talk a bit. And it's great.
There actually is nothing better than that.
It's amazing.
When you find someone that you can actually converse with in
Yeah.
the language that you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why you get like a lot of you do get a lot of foreigners here, Spanish and French coming over here to learn English.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of hard because there's not like a sole place where Irish lives. It's very hard to find someone that you can go ahead and have a little conversation with.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I think, like with foreigners or whatever, and some might be here temporarily, some might be like settled here now, or like or them, their parents were like immigrants or whatever, and they're born here. I will still like say it to these people, like, it's all thing is language. It's all context, I'll be like, they give me a coffee. I've got a big smile. I'm like, got a meal mahagat, and they're like, oh, you must have said thank you or something,
A lot of people would think you're off your rocker there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Saying that, people's like, oh, he's a weird one. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing is, I just don't care.
Yeah.
But I think if the language is going to have a future, I think people need to get over themselves and not. And this is a big. I think ultimately, spoiler alert. I think the destiny of Irish depends on the destiny of Irish consciousness. So it's consciousness, culture, language, something like that. Like the culture, the way of being. Say Irish people are quite like. It's a good thing, don't just be all like, oh, I'm the center of attention or whatever. Be part of the team, have some, give and take, be understated, and I think that can sometimes make people go like, yeah, well, I'm not just going to start speaking Irish to these people.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a good example. I had a great night in the corner one night, and we met a old retired Irish teacher from Closhdown, and I can do a little bit. I still have a good bit, but there are lads from Closhdown, my old school, that like they couldn't speak a word of it. And
really?
Yeah, well, like they'd find it very hard to string some sort of sentence together. But anyways, we were in this pub, and this guy was just speaking the most fluent Irish you could think of, proper. You know what I mean? It was his first language. It was just rolling off his tongue so well, and we could kind of sense like
Ganges of Gaeilge.
Exactly. We were kind of sensing like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to. Knowing he was a teacher, I don't want to go up and speak to him, and then he's sitting there correcting me the whole time. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of making a show of us that we still don't have the language. But I was quite surprised. We went up to him, me and my friend Jake. We went straight up to him. We were going to try to speak some Irish to him, and we kind of warned him, oh, it's a bit broken at the moment, but and he was just so delighted that we wanted to come up and speak Irish. And I think there are a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Especially teachers. Irish teachers seem to have some sort of passion that I've never seen for a language. But it would be great if there were more fluent speakers in and about where me and you would hang out or something like that, and that we could just be like, listen, we have some broken Irish, but we want to improve. Yeah. And it just takes that one person to be like, let me take you and show you the way kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and someone said, some guy like who taught himself, I guess he had done the education thing, and again we'll get into that, like the but like everyone, it's compulsory, although it's not taught very well as far as I can tell.
It's not, no.
In most places.
Yeah.
But like, so a lot of people have this massive vocabulary bank in their heads. I might have that from past lives or something, or genetic memory, sometimes it feels like it. Like I'll say a phrase, oh, that feels really good. That feels like you just unkinked some knot in my like psychic muscle, psychic body, astral bodies. Oh yeah, like like the Hyundul. What's the thing usually? Gahyundul. I was like, oh yeah, I knew. I didn't know I was missing it until I had it. Anyway, but was the point? What were we saying? Saying the teacher is delighted that you're speaking, and well, that was a killer crack. That was great.
Nice.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It'll come to me if it's.
We were saying that like it's important to find. It's hard to find people that will just give you the chance.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I remembered. So there's this guy, and he was basically saying like he's really subtle. He's just always chuckling. It's hell funny. But he was like really fluent. You know, he had that in school, but he was never fluent. And just by he somehow got himself up to like he seems like pretty fluent now.
Really? Cool.
And he was just his advice was just keep saying the words.
Really? Yeah.
Just keep saying the words. I thought that was incredibly deep.
Yeah.
Because you just say the words, you'll start to string them together into a grammar. That's the thing, like, oh, here's this grammar. It's like, no, that emerges spontaneously from.
Yeah.
Here are some situations. Here are the words for those situations.
Especially for someone like yourself, who like the ultimate goal for you would just to be able to speak it.
Yeah.
What do you think about writing it?
Writing?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I've written some poems in Irish, but like.
Do you want to give us one?
I don't think. Sure. All right.
Come on.
I don't have any off the top of my head, but I could make one for you.
Okay, go for it.
Let's see. Let's try. J Fian agus gach and Doan and Shaw agus and Shin and Shaw Shin Shar agus Dinna and Nish le Gaeilge Egra agus Eist an Allen Ave.
Beautiful. Very much. Do you want to put a name on that poem?
Let's call it
Fairhain.
Huh?
Do you want to call it Fairhain?
Fichachain, what does that mean?
21.
Fichachain. Could do. I wouldn't know. Birthday is better. So Lavre. Lavreha.
Yeah.
So
nice.
what's the translation? So can't remember what I was saying. It was good
matter.
Anyway.
We'll,
all right.
We'll get it back and we'll write it down.
Yeah.
They'll be teaching it in class.
Something about God and all things and ancestors and people now all being together in the beauty of being.
Do you know I got that when you were saying it?
Dig 'em.
I understand where you're going.
I know, but just for those listening at home, it's not just you and me. Remember,
okay, fine.
We're journeying through time with the audience. For all we know, we could get conquered by some aliens race in like 13 years hence, and they could just get obsessed with Gaeilge and be like, we must understand. And they might watch that podcast and they have millions of tentacled monsters watching us.
Absolutely, I can see that happening for sure. To be honest,
it's kind of terrifying how
it is terrifying.
How certain I am that it's going to happen.
It's terrifyingly beautiful
and beautiful. Yeah,
and beautiful.
Like your eyes. So yeah, and so you're saying like the people who, I feel like there's a lot of people, the kind of people who you're going to bump into who are going to speak Irish to you, which is the real way, the real life of the language. Now, education is great, really important, but daily on the street, not a government program, just the people.
Yeah.
If the people don't use it, it's over. If the people want to use it, it's alive.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of people who are going to speak it are generally aware of these things and these kind of patterns, and are generally very encouraging and just really delighted that anyone wants to try to speak, even if it's.
There's such a charm.
I haven't had anyone judge me for my.
There's such a charm, isn't there? It's so. Yeah. It's so like it's almost romanticized in Ireland when someone comes out with a few words.
Yeah.
Or sings a little song. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but then there's the positive and the negative to that. Like, it's romanticized and it is beautiful, and a lot of people really appreciate it, like love it. But then you have people who are cynical and like, oh great, how cliched, another old wacky Gaelic thing. Like, oh, how cool are you?
Like, those people
like, yeah, okay, man.
Worst, aren't they?
Yeah,
honestly. the attitude some people have towards the Irish culture, and you definitely get it. Look, I don't want to.
But they're probably right occasionally. But I think in general they're wrong. There's probably some people do that probably to try to impress people occasionally.
Oh yeah, but sorry, I think that they're definitely like. I know some people, and it's look, I'm not gonna, but
name, go on.
No, well, not
name, right.
but like like a culture of maybe more upper class people would definitely look at like Irish sports and Irish music as absolute like what they would say boggers. Do you know what I mean? It's for people folks down the country that like live on a farm and all that crack. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the right attitude would be, this is the country we're in. We should be speaking the same fucking language. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if. Yeah, I'd say we should, from my point of view, but I wouldn't say we have to. I'd say like I can understand, and I won't be unhappy about someone who's like, I just don't want anything to do with that language. It doesn't interest me.
Yeah,
that's fine. But I think the fact is most people do, but there's just all these little knots which we're hopefully going to kind of untangle.
You can't force it.
Exactly.
You can't force it on someone. It has to be. Yeah.
Freedom.
Absolutely. You're dead right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there are like people like I can imagine some of my old Irish teachers preaching it to everyone. It's like you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You can bring someone in gently if you want to try, and if they're not interested, that's it.
Yeah, I think it backfires if you try to.
Yeah, absolutely. It nearly force someone away if you try to do it. Yeah.
So we could So maybe we should just get into a bit of
just so for all the listeners, we're not forcing Irish on these folks. We're giving them a little taste of what it means to us.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me what it means to you?
Yeah. Cool. Well, Irish to me is like music. It's like you're making sounds with your face. It's patterns of rhythm. Dun da da dun da da. Tá sé go hálan ar fad. Smaoinm go bhfuil mé egálam go má. Whatever, like there's a rhythm to it, there's a melody to it, and there's like kind of certain tones to it, and the vowels and consonants you use. So there's all these combinations of that, and so just like with music, it's random vibrations. In a way, you'd be it's meaningless, but the ordering of them can reveal a subtle language of like expression and meaning. And so just like you listen to Bach, and it's like some beautiful music, and it's full of emotion, or in the music you can add lyrics on top and it gets even next level or a different kind of level. I think for me, even without the meaning of the words, Irish is a kind of music.
Yeah.
And it's very beautiful, and we're very musical people, Irish. And so I think that's built into the language, and you can hear it. So there's that, and then on top of it, it's like languages, there's a lot of overlap, and Irish is an Indo-European language, so it's same branch that is Sanskrit or like Hindi, if you go way back, comes from Turkey or something ages ago. But then the Indo-European language, it's split off, so it's not a Latin language like Spanish, Italian, French, even Romanian is kind of Romance or Latin language. It's not Germanic like English. I think French might have a bit of Germanic influence. English is from French influence as well. Scandinavian language, German, they're all Germanic. Irish is a Celtic language, like Scottish, Gaelic. So it's got a certain unique, I think, like we're talking about how every language, even among Germanic languages, there's this word gezellig in Dutch, in Netherlands.
Right. And
it means something like cozy or cool. It's kind of like an experience of being with people, a beautiful state of being with people. And there's no real translation for it in English. And how many words like that are there in Irish, where there's ways which evolved over the millennia to communicate the way like our ancestors were living, where you can't actually scratch that itch in any language except Irish.
Really?
Well, I imagine that's so, because like there's that with like words in other languages. There's many of them, and then that's that, and then there's also phrases, etc. I think there's just ways of like expressing yourself in any language which are unique. And I'm very drawn and kind of just for mystical reasons that aren't really clear to myself entirely, to Ireland and Irish culture. And then I kind of feel like there's almost like a unlocking, like with any language you can unlock new parts of your mind. Like with French, it happened to me where I can kind of like, oh, I can think in French. And if I want to do meditation and slow down my mind, I would sometimes think in French because it's very slow. I have to do one word at a time, and I don't know where I'm going, and it would be like, and then I can do that in Irish, you know. But the thing with my Irish is because it's my ancestral language. It's like a special thing where I kind of feel like I'm learning to think the way my ancestors thought.
This is what I always thought you would get straight into, whereas I think it's a mutual thing for us. Where with Irish, now I don't want to get too techy with it or anything, but with Irish, you definitely feel a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. Conor Gaeilge, belonging.
Oh, here.
Oh, here. Huh?
You're getting at me again.
What would your teacher think? What would my tutor think?
I know.
No.
Yeah.
You don't need to be perfect. No one needs to be
exactly,
perfect.
But like you're getting what we're getting at is that we like you coming all the way from Australia and living in Ireland, and just because you had like a bit of family here, and you've all of a sudden became so hypnotized by Irish culture and language, and it definitely what I think it gives you and what I think gives me, it gives you a sense of originality to where you're from, which is what most people would say, but I definitely sense that very strongly in you, and I definitely get it in myself quite a lot as well. Yeah. Would you agree?
Definitely.
Do you concur?
I concur. Definitely. Yeah, and so I think like sometimes people are like, well, what's, and like, you know, talking to some Brazilian friend of mine, he's like, man, I just don't get the point of like Irish, you know, like what's the point, man, you know, like just use English, like everyone understands, you know, like it takes so long to like, there's like tens of thousands of words, like, you know, or whatever, you know, what's the point of?
But it's not about that, is it? It's not about just.
It's not about efficiency or business or something.
It's not a functional language, Irish.
It could be, but that's not the
at
point.
the moment. That's not why you're learning it.
No, it's not the only reason to learn.
It's not the only reason to learn, exactly. Yeah.
And at the moment, it wouldn't be a very good reason to learn it, unless you want to go into government where
exactly you really want to push it.
Yeah.
And influence people to speak it. But at the moment, it's definitely a sense of.
But like in government, you know, like if you are fluent in Irish, it was Gaeilge is the name, like Gaeilge. Exactly. Some people say Gaeilge, right?
Some people say Gaeilge, yeah.
Gaeilge. Gaelic, I think in Ulster they say Gaelic.
Yeah, Gaelic. That's just
Gaelic?
a pronunciation, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But and then you could say Irish. It's probably the common way to call it in English, right?
Yeah,
people used to call it Gaelic.
Yeah, well, getting into something slightly, but going off a bit off track, but it feels to me that the Irish in Dublin, what I've heard, it's not as rhythmic or as you know, Gaeilge na Moon or Gaeilge na Chun.
But that's like Hiberno English in Dublin also in general, I
suppose, yeah.
Isn't it? It's kind of more West Brit,
yeah, but that's definitely just a south thing. In Dublin, like it's very rare you'd hear it's you don't really hear the Dublin accent come out in Irish language as much as you do in a Galway accent in Galway
Donegal.
Irish or Donegal, exactly. And that's where like Gala comes in. Gala, yeah.
Is that how they say the language?
Like if they're speaking fast, to make Irish no Gala kind of thing.
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
I don't know, yeah, something like that.
Yeah. But I think that's cool. Like, you know, something. It's like someone who's playing guitar and they're like, you know, kind of doing a pretty poor job of it. You're like, how long you been playing? Oh, you know, 2 months. You're like, you're doing pretty great.
Yeah.
So it's like if people who have been cut off from the ancestral language for reasons we'll get into, are like, you know, they're speaking it, even if it's, I don't know, maybe you might feel like not quite as soulful as the places where it's ancestrally passed down. That only makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
And in a way, you could say, oh, it's just another thing. Maybe that's just the way they prefer to do it. Could be like a dialectic thing that's deforming.
Absolutely.
Bunch of boring people with their boring version of Irish, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what we always used to say, it's a bit weird to say, but it's far Gaeilge briste.
No bear la clista.
Yeah, you know the one.
Better broken Irish is better than clever English.
Exactly.
Hilarious.
Which is what we're really getting at here. Is like it doesn't matter if you're good at Irish. It doesn't matter if you're good at guitar.
Yeah.
You're giving it a fucking go, and that's the crack.
Exactly. And look, you know, if you took that statement literally, it would be like, a bit extreme.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, English is great. I love English. You know?
Yeah.
I write in English. I write poems in English and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But, you know, it's like there is some truth to that. There's a healthy nugget of clumped grains of truth to that statement. Like, you know, just having a go at it and just doesn't need to be perfect.
Yeah.
There's a beauty to that. And that there's a determination.
Exactly.
Like history, like.
Yeah, but like even people that aren't determined to speak the language, that throw, as I said before, that throw like little bits of Irish here and there. Especially people that like
great.
As you said, your man, like he can speak fluent Irish, but you don't need to show that off. You can just throw little bits here and there, and I think that's very it's cool.
Yeah, it's like it's lovely, like to hear it just drop it into language. Like, you know, a lot of people say sláinte, cheers.
Sláinte, yeah.
I say slán, you know, slán a while,
Yeah.
safe home, whatever.
Yeah.
But back to what I was going to say before, like, so Irish, there's a lot of government jobs, I think, where you need to be fluent in Irish, right?
Yeah, well, like,
or at least
also, like, a lot
puts
of
you above the others.
like the guards are expected to be able to speak Irish.
Yeah.
The police here. Do you know what I mean? And like a lot, I know a lot of bollockses that will be getting in trouble with the police or have a little spat with a guard, and he'll just and if he speaks fluent, he'll roll out the fluent Irish and try to confuse the guard and whatnot. Like, do you know what I mean?
I did that a bit. Some guards were telling me something like, and I was like, just like naturally just popped into Irish for some reason. Maybe subconsciously I was doing that.
Yeah.
But I accidentally messed up. I meant to say, all right, see ya. I actually said, see you soon.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, that's kind of cheeky. Whoops.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, I mean, that would be functional if you want to go down that path. But, like, in general, I think the reason why I'm learning Irish is, like, it's the same way with jiu-jitsu. Or jiu-jitsu is, like, self-defense. But, like, say the motivation's pretty similar, where it's, like, it's a hobby. It's just for fun. And I think that's the way to do it, where it's sustainable. It's just each day unto itself.
There's no pressure.
Yeah.
You can just have a few little words and move on and go back to your English. But, like, you can always slip into it, especially if you come across someone that knows how to speak it fluently.
Yeah.
At least you can say a few words, and then maybe you'll learn more through that.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a cool thing. So yeah, all right. So let's see. I guess we should talk about like so the situation is basically Irish. So the Irish that have been like here for like say our ancestors have been here for like thousands of years, many a thousand of years, just breeding with, you know, distant family, on this misty island for God knows how long. So Irish was always the language for a long, long time. It wasn't exactly the same as the modern Irish, you know, like English isn't the same as Old English.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, pretty much it was like the same legacy, the same kind of vibration or like linguistic song being revived and revived with each new incarnating soul who's learning it. So it slowly morphs and changes, but it's the same song, you know, more or less.
Yeah.
And so then in come the English. Shout out to the British Empire.
Rest in peace, Queen Lizzie.
Yeah.
Place in hell for you, Margaret. No.
I think
there are a lot of people like that going back a bit.
Oh yeah.
That would be like, as soon as something, they love to sing the Ra songs. They love to pretend like they're real Irish, but they don't put the effort in with the Irish language.
Yeah.
And it's just people that were like, you know, so against the British and all this bollocks. it's like it would be lazy to say the only reason Irish isn't a language now is because of the English.
Correct.
That would be a lazy statement.
Indeed.
Like I like if
or an ignorant statement.
An ignorant
Either one's
statement,
kind of lazy.
yeah.
If you're ignorant, it's kind of
Yeah.
lazy with your mind.
Yeah, I would definitely concur with that statement there, Jamie. But that's like, even if these people that are so against the British Empire or whatever, like, that is such an excuse not to be like, not to be centered with your own ancestors and the Irish language and whatever. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think
I'm spatting on a bit there, but you know
I see what you mean. No, good points. Like, I think it's like that thing. Rather than, instead of tearing down the old system, make it obsolete. You know, build it and they will come. You know, make your own thing.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. I'm like, you know, I'm not like, I mean, I'm not holding my breath for like the government to start teaching Irish properly. No. I think that can happen. But the main basic thing is just start living, be the change you want to see in the world, and go. This is, I think, the pattern of behavior, which, you know, will, like, you know, is the way that a language lives and thrives and is reborn. Yeah, but I think people, they can definitely get lost in, like, you know, blaming the British too much. But of course, ridiculous. There's a lot of truth to it, and we're going to talk about a bit, just because it's important to know.
It's a note.
It's a note.
It has to be noted.
A few notes.
Yeah.
It's a symphony of dark symphony. But then also, just before we do that, like, you know, I think some people can be like, oh yeah, I'm all for the Ra and IRA, and against, you know, like, feeling, you know, against the British, and even still feeling like, okay, even the Queen, like, you know, okay, she looks great and, you know, charming and stuff, but what's the deal with the apartheid state of Northern Ireland?
Yeah.
And what, she was kind of hands off with that, or the Iraq War, all these things, and you're like, no one can see when Philip dies, your whole will is secret, no one can see it.
Exactly.
What's going on there? You know.
I wonder what that letter is in Australia.
You wouldn't know, huh?
I wonder what that letter locked up is. Do you know that?
What letter? No.
There's like this supposedly a letter that she written, and it can't be opened for another 36 years.
Whoa.
And it's locked in, like,
when did she write it?
I don't know.
35 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it's like locked in this Australian old Victorian building in Australia.
Surrounded by ninjas.
Probably has probably unlocks the Irish spell, maybe. Something along those lines.
Some ancient Egyptian curse. She's like,
the solution is they just need to believe.
But
we must never let them believe. For many years we have been gardening this island and weeding out those things we do not want to grow.
You never know, Jamie. There might be, if the whole of Ireland spoke Irish, might unlock some spell.
I would say so. Yeah,
some magic that we don't know.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
I reckon.
Oh, we're getting in.
Sure,
we're getting a bit there.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I think so, man. I
never thought of it.
I think there's all sorts of mystical
elements
to this thing. Yeah. But I think, you know, so people can have a grudge, you know, the British Empire or Queen Elizabeth or whatever. I think it's like, you know, forgive but don't forget. Be aware, and it's like
nearly
just
use it as motivation.
But forgiveness is so important. But like setting boundaries is important. So if the British are like, hey guys, how about, you know, we do this thing? It's like, yeah, well, I haven't forgot that other thing. But like, say it's like with fire, you burn your hand. Then the reason you don't touch the fire again isn't, if you're sane, isn't because you're scared of it. It's because you're aware.
You know what's going
to happen.
Yeah.
So same thing with, you don't need to be angry. You don't need that primal response. You just understand who you're dealing with, and the track records and whatever, what was said and what was done, and so but those people, fair enough if they don't want to learn Irish. I think that's fine. They could have a deep connection to Ireland and Irish culture, but just not want to, or, you know.
But it's such bollocks, Jamie. Like the only connection to have to Irish culture is hating the British, which is such a
that's silly.
It's just silly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you always see these people. I know I said it before, but
Well,
it makes me cringe.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think some people, like at a lower level of consciousness, and again, no judgment, but it's just that's a fact. Some people are, there's a spectrum of how good people are at playing guitar, at gardening, at baking cakes,
Yeah.
doing accounting. I'm terrible at accounting, sure, whatever. But, and at being conscious in general and applying critical thinking and understanding the reality of the world, there's a spectrum of that too. And so part of that's your decisions, but a lot of it is just fate. It's just you're born with a certain brain, born into a bad neighborhood, born into to abuse or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and or indoctrination. And so certain people, they've got the free wills within certain parameters, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily judge, although I would set boundaries, but I wouldn't be like
that thing that you just said there about like whatever you're born into is so huge, because like some of my best mates, some of my new mates from college, having they didn't even know the 1916 rising happened.
What?
And there are a lot of people like that, Shane.
No way.
Oh yeah, like not a lot maybe. Like a lot of people might have heard of it, but no one know. No, like a lot of people wouldn't even know who Project Pierce is or anything like that. And don't have, like, there are people are literally clueless about what the Irish language actually is.
Yeah.
That I've actually grown up in Ireland. I'm not too far away from where I live. And it's so weird that just because you're born into this, whatever path you're on or whatever, not to get too mystical, but like it only takes that little second for my dad to just go into that school.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden my whole mind's been open to the Irish language. But it's nothing against these people. It's not their fault.
Yeah.
Just because you didn't grow up with Irish in your household or even grew up with knowing about Irish, that's not their fault at all. It's
absolutely.
People not being educated and whatever.
And I think the way to connect with those people is not through judging them because then they're just going to put up a wall and fight back.
Yeah.
It's to be like, hey man, I understand. I would have done the exact same thing. I get probably in your situation.
Well, that comes into like different age. Like I would definitely like.
I hope I wouldn't.
Just for a simple age, I was definitely going to slag something like that. Yeah. Just because we're lads, we're going to slag each other or whatever. Yeah. But like, if someone really showed interest and really wanted to learn, that's where it'd be like, let me show you the ways. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Here's a lightsaber.
Exactly.
The Gaeilge saber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that's why it's so like I would say a lot of people would be so shocked at your knowledge of Irish history, which I would put above mine easily, because you've actually studied it and whatever. But like, I think people would be shocked, would think that it's incredibly abnormal for someone to come from here and just know all this stuff about it. Well, I suppose like you're a bit of an historian anyway. You love your history and stuff like that. But like, people in general that would come over would have an idea about the rising and whatnot, and the reason why Ireland hates Britain. Yeah, that's a very broad statement. But in general,
it's part of the energy field for sure.
Exactly.
It wouldn't take much misbehaviour on the British for Ireland to get very angry.
Exactly.
Like that, because there's things like the trauma is built in to your personal self, everyone's, and then collective kind of personalities like a culture or a nation. And I think for evolutionary reasons, evolving organisms, be it like a country like a tribe or a family or an individual, lessons are remembered because the humans who didn't remember the lessons, they didn't survive history. They were too weak. So history's been so ruthless. Only that which is very, very adaptive survives. And so the people who remember the lessons, that's who we're all descended from.
Yeah.
Everyone else got wiped out sooner or later. And so there are these things where, it's like you can, if you're conscious enough, you can try to, and I think you can successfully like forgive these things and keep them in mind, but most people say who perhaps aren't quite within reach of that, and I think we're all, so I'm not totally, it depends on, no one's perfect at this, but that these things, they're there somewhere, and I'm sure it's not just us in the English, it's like all kinds of cultures have that, the French against the Germans, whatever.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, But we were saying before, like these people, like say people who are kind of like
Not clued in. That's it.
not clued in, yeah. They the thing is, there's a balance, and it's a wobbly line. You just try to walk it as gracefully as you can. Is like a friend, you want to point out their flaws in order to help them grow. You're gonna be like, that's what you said, that's not right, or that's stupid or whatever. But you also want to respect their freedom and be like, and their self sovereignty. Like, hey, you want to be drinking too much? That's kind of your decision to some extent, And so there's a balance. And so with people like that, there's kind of some degree to which you're like, yeah, hey man, you live your life, be your best self. But then there is a element of being, if you want to be a good friend or a good, human brother or sister, like we're all brothers and sisters in that sense, there kind of is a point where you're like, well, I feel like it's kind of beholden upon me to kind of lay this out there. I think you're missing something here, and I feel like I'm not judging you, but I'm putting this out there because I think you can ignore it, but this is I can see that you are missing this deep down, and I think this is what you really want. And as a friend, I'm trying to give you a gift here.
Yeah, or just a nod to where you're from. Like if people just don't know, like it's not like you're telling people that they're missing something in their lives.
Yeah,
it's more so, there was a bit of a war, just so you know,
that was a bit.
We're not part of Britain for a reason.
Yeah.
And it seems that it goes over people's heads quite easily.
Yeah.
Which is not, like, if you're just not interested, you're not interested, just move on. But, like, I think that it is important to know some sort of history.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, with that...
And look, like, sorry, like, we wouldn't be sat here talking about this if we both didn't have some sort of understanding of where we've come from and all that jazz, fucking bollocks.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And like a lot of that is like the luck of the Irish, or the luck of some of the Irish. Like, partly it's like, your interest and who knows, your karma or whatever. But yeah, a lot of it is just like being lucky to be in the right streams of causality, and so we're very lucky in that sense. I think both of us, that like we're able to be grace with the ability to be like to appreciate it. It's an incredible thing.
And it's like it's just something we like.
Yeah,
it's just something we kind of like. We like talking about it. We like speaking.
It's a bit cheeky.
It's a bit cheeky.
Out of nowhere. Just
yeah.
Oh, how you doing, man? You good? Cut inch scale.
Cut inch scale.
Just like
inch scale. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, inch scale. Yeah. Sha.
Go for an old Punta Guinness.
Oh yeah.
The whole lot.
But yeah. So the history, right? In a nutshell, won't belabor the point.
Do you want to do a little summary of it?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So basically, Ireland had its own kings. There was more or less a high king, ruling from Tara over kind of. It's sometimes debated to what extent they all were it more symbolic or ceremonial, or was it kind of a legal thing? But either way, and it probably varied over time. But so you had that, and then you had provincial kings in each province. And then you'd have smaller kings over each smaller territories.
Or the counties, maybe.
Counties were an English invention, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but yeah, some of them might have corresponded to the old things. Like I think the Tir Connell is now Donegal.
Yeah.
More or less. I think it's pretty similar. So in around now that went on, and Ireland had a flourishing civilization. Ireland, you might not be aware, just briefly mentioned, like some people say, like, oh yeah, but the English gave us all this stuff, so why do you criticize it? Look, there are positives from the British Empire, definitely, but we would have had our own positives anyway, and maybe they would have been better. Who's to say? And so we're just going to assume it's a bit of Stockholm syndrome,
Like you could say maybe the hurling would be as big as football is.
Yeah,
like soccer, like the Premier League. Everyone's mad about that. Yeah, maybe hurling would have been our thing. Do you know what I mean? We would have been getting into like the different teams and getting support and different.
Could have been so different.
You never know.
It's a very decentralized culture.
Yeah,
it's tribal.
It's tribal
and
as fuck,
yeah, and still to some extent, or quite an extent, but politically it's very decentralized in Ireland. So, which allegedly is one reason it was difficult for them to conquer us, but they did. Very diligent. fair play to them. They made it happen. But so around Ireland, the Roman Empire collapsed, right, in like 500 AD in the West, something like that, and then it caused the Dark Ages. Basically, just the civilization was so advanced, but it was fragile. It was top heavy, and so it was overextended, and then basically these Germanic tribes kind of conquered it, and everything just fell apart. Letters didn't get to where they're meant to go. The writer hadn't been paid, so they couldn't go. Everything just collapsed. And within a generation, you had like basically the whole empire lost the education system, and pretty soon, almost no one knew how to read and write, and so no one knew how to think about these ideas which had been sustaining the society's advanced state. And so you had the church retaining the ability to understand Greek and Latin and these old writings, but they were kind of just, I don't know, they didn't look like a very healthy entity at that point anyway. They're just trying to build up their power. But you had all these, warlords take over their, little pockets or patches of the old empire, and then over generations their descendants became kings and whatever, or lords. In Ireland had been, Christianity had come to Ireland through the Romans, but they had never invaded. So it was politically independent and stable. So the empire collapsed. Ireland was fine. And Ireland was already very advanced and successful in arts and culture and all these kind of things. Very wealthy, actually. And
really,
yeah, as far as I
wealthy
understand,
country.
Ireland is very wealthy. Yeah, that's the thing that people talk about. Like, oh, we've got nothing. It's like, I think a lot of that's like gaslighting from imperialists who maybe turned from blatant imperialism to financial cloak and daggers imperialism of like who funds Fine Gael and where's all that money coming from, and if you would an empire really just give up on their possessions, what they viewed as that for 800 years or whatever. I don't know, but speculation. But point being, Ireland had cultivated Christianity, but it was kind of like a hippie Christianity. People say it was kind of more because there was the nature worship religion before that, the Druids and stuff.
Right.
Anyway, they had the monasteries where they would have they would people go they have schools. People could go there and learn. If you didn't have money, you could go and work there and get educated. Yeah.
In return,
yeah. They were growing stuff. They had animals. They were sourcing inks for all their
flourishing.
manuscripts. Flourishing, sure.
Flourishing.
Flourishing. Absolutely. So they and then they started colonizing Britain and mainland Europe with monasteries, and basically respreading civilization and turning the lights back on in Europe, where they would they'd send out these monks with these little harps, these little small harps. The harps weren't that big back then in general.
Right. Yeah.
And they would like be charming people with their music or whatever. And then so converting a lot of people to Christianity, and also rebooting civilization through education, farming, and how to do all these basic craft industries and stuff.
Wow.
Ireland did that, right? So Ireland wasn't, just like some backwater or whatever. But then over time, Europe, it turns into kind of more Middle Ages, but the Middle Ages, kind of out of the Dark Ages into more like flourishing chivalry kind of feudal era. Then England, basically, at some point, they invade Ireland. This is around, I think, 1170 or so.
Right.
I think. And they take, conquer a lot of Ireland, but then eventually, they can't hold on to it that long. They kind of lose it a bit and they retreat. And then back and forth over the next couple hundred years, they kind of try to take over more territory and they lose it. But they always keep the Pale, the area around Dublin. That's where the phrase "to go beyond the pale" means.
Right.
That was palisade, which is a wooden wall. There was this big wooden wall around kind of like County Dublin, maybe a bit of Kildare kind of thing. And so people would go outside of the English-controlled area, and they're like, "Man, we're in with the natives now," Anyway, but eventually, around 1600, Grace O'Malley, she was defeated. 1601, I think, in some battle. I think there was maybe a few others. This is where my history gets patchy. But basically, Ireland kind of suffered military defeats and was not able to reassert sovereignty. And the British, who are now Protestants, Ireland's basically the first colony of England, and they went in and had the plantations where they kicked off thousands of people off their ancestral lands and just said, we're planting potatoes, which had just gone from the New World colonies or whatever, and they put Scots and English people on the land. And so that's why a lot of people from Northern Ireland, like loyalists or whatever, they feel like British, a lot of them, because they're descended from British people.
Wow.
And so And so you had this not just in Northern Ireland but all over Ireland. This was happening, and you had suppression of the Catholic. The Irish were Catholic in general, and the British were like Protestants, Church of England, and so people were discriminated against for that. Like you couldn't own land if you're Catholic. There's penal laws. There's things where eventually they're just taxation and discrimination against like the native people. A lot of atrocities or whatever. And later on in time, when there were like the public schools, which they brought in, there was only available in English. So they're kind of trying to, and there's even some laws where you weren't allowed to use Irish. You couldn't use Irish in court. So some people who didn't speak any English, they were, so people didn't speak English at this point. Like few people did, there was some guy who was executed and he didn't even know what they're saying to him in court.
Wow.
Because they wouldn't speak to him. He was saying Irish and they wouldn't give him a translator. So there's all this stuff, and as I talk, I can feel this pain, this ancestral trauma welling up. It's just the injustice of it,
The unfairness of
the unfairness of it, and no being worth its space would allow itself to be a coward.
Yeah.
And there's a sense
There's
of
no
like
backing down.
you can't. Yeah, you need to assert the right boundary.
Yeah.
Love is a balance and kindness where if you don't assert, set the right boundary, then that's like a downward spiral to like you just get out of balance. And so I think there's some sort of element like that where this kind of triggers that in us. So like we're like it's not right what happened, and we're kind of shamed. Anyway, try to wrap this up, the history part of it, but they so people who wanted a better life. So it's basically okay. So I think the famine hit in like 1850-ish, like 1847. That goes, I think, the worst year or whatever. The potato crops all failed. Ireland was heavily, and again that was kind of legacy of the English, heavily reliant on the potato crop, and this blight, this kind of mold or rot or whatever spread through all of Europe's potato crops, but really affected Ireland. Ireland had a lot of food actually, more than enough food to survive. But it was all being sold abroad or to England or whatever. And a lot of it, the land which had belonged to people's grandparents, great-grandparents, they were like, oh, we have no food, but there's food on this land, which was ours and then taken from us. But the English, with all their soldiers, were like, and it was heavily militarized at that point. There's been rebellions and revolutions every generation through Ireland. People have always been trying to regain sovereignty. So the British were ready for it, and they just put it down and had it tight control. And they refused to, they had some kind of thing, oh, we'll give you some weak soup if you convert to Protestantism. All this mad stuff. Apparently the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire wanted to give money to the Irish and the British wouldn't accept it or something. I don't know all the details. But basically, I could be wrong, but from what I understand, it was a genocide by omission, where they knew what was happening. They could have stopped it, but they said, this is very good for us politically and culturally, because most of the affected people are Irish speakers, and they're most of the people who are less under our cultural hegemony and influence. And so it kind of basically made things easier for them to manage their empire, which is understandable. They want to run their empire. They don't want things to get out of control, just like we don't. Yeah. But there's just lacking the empathy to understand what a criminal thing they were doing, I think. Maybe some of them liked it, I don't know. But and some of them were even saying it's like a punishment from God on the Irish for not understanding that they're the real Christianity,
Do you think they could have went about it a better way?
I think they should have allowed people to have access to the food, especially given that their ancestors had been kicked off the land with, like might is right. That doesn't really make sense if you think it through. And like, what about, like, there were people, taxation, remove taxation until the famine's gone. Like, there were people who were going along the beach and they were going to hunt or like getting mussels or something. And it was like they were being imprisoned, I think, because that's the Queen's food. She owns all the riverways and and so it's outrageous stuff. As someone said, by the end of it, 1 million soul out of 9 million population, which is it's never got that high. We're like 7 million-ish now, the whole island. So we're still not back. That's one of I think the only country in the world maybe, which is the population then was bigger than it is now. So 1 million souls went to the New World, and another 1 million went to the next world. Someone
Okay.
said to heaven. But like, so a lot of them went to like, Australia, Canada, America.
Yeah.
And so this kind of, the population who was speaking Irish had been like 50% or so, because it's still under the influence of the British Empire, but still, huge number speaking the Irish language. And then after the famine, it was down to like massive, much less. And a lot of the people, they were like, look, we just need to get ahead. We can't, this is very dangerous. We can't starve like all these other people are starved. We need to learn English. We need to get into the schools. Just do it, even if you can't learn Irish. And so the language dwindled and dwindled. Around 1900, there's a thing called the Gaelic revival. People started bringing the language back. There's Conor and Gaeilge was brought about. Resurgence in interest in it. That kind of led partly to the revolution, rising in 1916 to get rid of the British Empire. And then in 1919 and 1921, the War of Independence, we get independence. Northern Ireland, the British are like, yeah, we're keeping this because they had all this industry and ports, which were all these reasons, whatever, divided the island. But the language then kind of
spiraled.
Yeah, it had been a downward spiral.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I just want to kind of set this like as clear as possible. Then it was brought the new state, the new Irish state, which controlled 26 of the 32 counties, right? So the Free State, as it was originally, that, and then the Republic of Ireland, which the Constitution was developed in 38. So that's when we finally got independent, basically, of like the British Empire fully. Before that was part of the Commonwealth, I think, or it was like a realm or whatever. Which caused the Civil War, because the British kind of did a divide and conquer thing a bit, like made us fight ourselves in a way. Again, nothing against the British, just the imperialism. That fight the ideas, don't fight the people. But then Irish was, very much encouraged, and it was made mandatory in schools. But then the way it was taught was very intense, just like the general Irish culture got very dark. Catholic Church with enormous control, a lot of suppression of individual kind of expression and stuff. And so it was all, and even until quite recently, this kind of brings us up to the present. Is like where I'd like to know what you know about like the current way it is in the Gael schools that you went to, the immersion schools, where you learn everything in Irish, including science and history, and then the normal schools where they learn it and it's compulsory, but it's just like any other subject, like learning Spanish.
Yeah.
But it was made compulsory, but taught in a way which is kind of, as an English teacher, as far as I can tell, is like god awful, not the way to do it.
Absolutely.
And so the language continued to dwindle. And in the Gael, there's a few areas called Gaeltacht, so areas where people still speak Irish natively as a first language, but they're all bilingual. There's no monolingual Irish speakers anymore.
Yeah.
I think in the 70s, the last one guy died or something. But they're kind of shrinking in population in terms of those, as far as I understand it. And so there's this situation where the language is at a bit of a crossroads, I think. And we have a very interesting and exciting situation where it's like by being at this point and being aware of what we're aware of and making our own choices and just living your own way, I think, grandiose dreams aren't generally a good idea, but dreams are good. Dreams are nice. And if you have your own dream, I think it's cool to be able to, and natural to wish that the language could be revived, like some beautiful Boffin Phoenix, But I think ultimately the thing is like just by loving it in your own self and just having the crack with it, enjoying it, that's the kind of way forward.
That's the spark.
So that would be my extremely concise summary
rendition of the Irish history, Jamie.
Thank you.
Incredible. You should be very proud that you know all that. So you're part of a very minority group that knows, that can go into depth like that with the Irish history.
Oh yeah, well, what can I say? My mum's got very good reflexes. Every time she's about to drop me, she just pull me back in line just in time. So thanks, Mum.
Well, you think you're all about it, do you?
No.
So what are we getting into? The Irish language, how it is now.
Yeah. So how is it? I guess we could say we're saying we don't actually know, right? But the percentage who speak it daily.
Did you look it up?
So I might look that up. Why don't you tell us like the way it's taught? So say you could start with the way maybe you're taught it.
Okay.
and then maybe some of your mates who aren't in the.
So I'll give you a little insight. I'll give you insight that you can't get from books, will I?
Yeah, please.
So I thought in my school there was 3 Irish teachers, and each teacher, 3 main Irish teachers. Do you know what I mean? The head Irish teachers, and 3 of them taught what I can gather in the most different ways possible. And the reason they were allowed to do that was because they're such masters of the Irish language. They were then given freedom to go and teach whatever their own way, in the way they seen fit, how it should be taught. But what the interesting is, even though the 3 of them taught in such different ways, every single student still was able to get an amazing understanding of the Irish language. So my guy, Mushroom again, big shout out, he definitely thought in a very traditional way. Well, I don't know if it's traditional per se, but it would definitely be more focused on words. And he wouldn't teach Irish through a structure. He would start a class, start a conversation, and pick out little words that you could use for this and that and the other.
Yeah.
So like a lot of times he'd come in and just start talking about football, start talking about something he saw on the news, start talking about an article, and then he'd get into obviously there were some classes where it would be grammar and whatever, and you could just tell he hated that. Do you know what I mean? He didn't want to do it, but it was compulsory. Do you know what I mean? But it was definitely, very free. Like a lot of the times we'd come in and we'd really enjoy the class because one of the lads would just put his hand up and say, "Can we talk about this today?" And that would be the whole fucking class, and we'd just be getting into, and he'd come up with some amazing terms and phrases to get into to be able to speak the language. And they were the best classes.
So cool. It's almost like some guitar teachers being like, "No, you could do this little lick."
Yeah, exactly. It was so easy. It was so natural for him to just go in there and enjoy. Like he was like I was scared of him. I was strict as fuck. Like, do you know what I mean? He was like a Nazi the way he was teaching Irish sometimes, and the way some of the teachers do go on is in especially in Irish schools is very not hostile, but like really like this is
intense.
This is us. Like this is what we want to be. Really pushing the whole motive to speak art. Like that was like like an understated theme of all of the classes, was to just push the fact that Irish should be our main language. So yeah, that was my little experience. Amazing. Like I think what I gained from that class more than anything was different little snazzy words and like beautiful little phrases and stuff like that. You know what I mean? The other teacher that, from what I gathered, I had him for history for the first 3 years. He was very grammar orientated and very very straightforward with the language. In the way he taught it, it would like the classes would be much more structured. He'd come in and he'd know what we're gonna do for the first 15 minutes. Then we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna do that. That was his way of doing it. But he's from Derry, and so he was able to come. The students in his class were able to get a completely different look at like a lot of, like it would be very hard to sit here and understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
And he's quite an impatient man, so you would have to be very on it.
Yeah.
You'd have to be very. You'd have to be right there. Like you'd have to be right on the ball, on the high ball. And you'd have to be. He was very OCD in the way he taught Irish. And he was more like about the essays, and everything was real, like grammar was correct, no grammar mistakes, no misspelling, all that stuff. So they definitely got a more professional.
Did you get taught by him for any of that stuff, or no?
No, I got him for history.
Right.
For the first 3 years of my schooling in Closhdown, but that was even though he taught history, it was more so an Irish lesson than it was anything. The other teacher, who's probably the main guy. He was very, from what I gathered, he was all about the poems, as in, like, this is just stuff I've heard from the other students, that he would, he would make the lads learn the poems off by heart, and get real. He would use poetry as his theme to get into it, whereas my teacher would use current affairs to get into it. He would use poetry and old Irish literature to teach his Irish, and then like that's the freedom they got. They were able to bring something to the class and then pick off the other bits of the curriculum. But he was bringing and stuff, he was bringing his thing. Yeah, he was bringing his passion for Irish, and then just picking off the curriculum in different ways. Do you know what I mean? Like the curriculum that we had to be taught. The stuff that we had to be taught to be able to sit the exams. He would pick that off. Same as my teacher, they would just pick that off as not the main point. The main point was, you're going to learn fucking Irish the way it should be spoken. Yeah. And the way it should be written. And I think it's cool that the three of them got such freedom to do it. Where is a huge contrast to the English speaking schools that learned before you taught. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, before you talk about that, the first guy you're talking about, he taught you in Irish class
for 5 years.
For 5 years, and then you're also learning like maths, right?
Yeah. I'll get into that. I'll get into that after I get off the Irish topic.
All right, cool.
But I'm going into the English thing. English speaking schools that learned Irish was completely influenced by how the government wanted it to be taught, which was just so they can get in there and sit the exams and that's it.
Get the scores.
Just get the scores. That's and a lot of them, even if that was their main goal, they still weren't able to do that. So they were still fucking shy teachers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Apparently the examiners very lenient.
We were very. Right. My teacher was very, very passionate and very much so against the idea of learning an essay off by heart. Yeah. He wanted you to be able to create. Yeah. Create Irish. Yeah. Read the question that they're trying to give you. Use your own experiences. Use your own literature that you've learned, and come up with something on the spot. Whereas the English-speaking schools would say, this could possibly come up, and this is kind of similar to that. So if you just learn this essay off, you'll be able to fit it in.
So wrong, man.
It's so wrong.
So insane that you can think like the whole point of a language is to use it.
Exactly. Like they weren't teaching the language. Yeah. They weren't teaching it. They were teaching how to pass an exam. Yeah. That's what they were doing. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I think, I wish I knew more about other Irish schools if they done it like that. But in Clash Own, because they get such good scores, the students get such great scores, they're able to neglect the government policies or whatever government influences on how language should be taught. Right, there you go. Nice. Getting into maths, science, all that stuff. Yeah, business, all taught through Irish. Okay, even my English class, my English teacher was from Donegal, Gaeilge. Yeah. And she had the most beautiful Irish. Oh, yeah. And she would just, like, if you were getting given out to in English class for doing something wrong, it'd be an Osgaeilge. And you'd know it'd be serious if you're getting given out to Osgaeilge. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's like I'm saying, like even if you're learning English, that still isn't the main language of the class. Yeah. All around her.
That's so funny. Yeah. So you'd learn Spanish. Oh, we're speaking Spanish, and then it'd be like speaking English around that to organize it. Like exactly. They're using Irish to organize.
No, they're using Irish. So I done French. I tried French. Don't even try speak to me in French.
Tu es très bon.
Yeah, je quitte la maison. That's kind of.
He's being humble. He's amazing.
What's it? Yeah. So like, if you had a question about French language, you would ask it in Irish.
Whoa.
You wouldn't go and say, what does that mean? You say, I'll call a sprilishin. Which, they're doing you a service there. Yeah. It's not like, if you went into the English class and all you spoke was English, or into the French class and all you speak was English, you're like, the grades from your classes would probably drop, because you need to be able to speak good Irish to be able to understand the questions, because all the exam questions are in Irish. The maths exam questions.
Yeah.
They're all in Irish. So
Yeah.
if you're going ahead and you're learning it in the class, and you're asking, and the teacher's speaking in English, the same fucking question that you learned could come up in Irish, but you wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting at there, but I definitely think, yeah,
It was just so good. I think you're saying like how comprehensive it was, that everything was, which is what struck me. It was like, that's incredible. The whole thing is in Irish.
everything. Yeah.
And that it seems like, you know, people move to another country and they can learn language really quick because on some level their brain is like, all right, this isn't just, you know, some sort of, you know, fun thing or whatever, even if it is fun, but it's like survival almost. Like, I need this, and the brain just kind of adapts and just, you know, picks it up pretty quick.
Yeah.
It seems like in your situation, didn't you say like people who had nothing, they would come in and within like a few months or something, they would be like,
Yeah, this is mad. This
Yeah,
is
tell
crazy. This is fun. Like, this is it's always seems to be a thing in definitely my school. I can't speak for any other Irish schools, but it seems that the lads that come in from an English speaking primary school seemed to end up doing better in the exams. I don't know about speaking. Some of them actually probably did, but they seem to be able to come in, and because they were nearly just given a clean slate, and they were going into, like, you know, primary school Irish, you get the good basics, and you get a decent way of speaking. You get a good understanding of how to speak the language. But going into Closh Own, it's almost as if they were only taught Closh Own-esque Irish, so that fitted really well into their 6 years that they spent there. Whereas I had a different understanding of Irish coming in and learning a new set of Irish. Do you know what I mean?
how was your, I don't see what you mean there. Like, how was your Irish different? Because Closh Owen, was that just a secondary school, high
Yeah,
school?
secondary
Okay,
school.
so
it
your
was
primary school was in
a
Irish
different
also?
school, but it was in Irish.
Okay.
So they're
How
like,
are they different?
yeah, well, like, it wouldn't be too different, but like it would just be like these guys were learning the exact same things that I learned since, you know, what would you call it, senior infants? Do you know what I mean?
What's that?
Like,
That's like
I don't,
how old? Primary school.
6 to 8.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Primary school.
They would be learning that in their first year of Closh Own.
Oh.
So I already
wow.
kind of knew that stuff,
Yeah.
but I kind of was being
Huh.
taught it in a different way.
Yeah. Do you think like you learnt it at a more subconscious level, like as a child?
Exactly. I
just
was literally going to say
absorbing it
that.
like a sponge.
Like a sponge, just kind of dripped in.
Because like say children, we're so adaptive, you know, like humans, we can, which is why we're not the strongest, but we're the most adaptive. And it seems like like as Darwin said, it's not the strongest species which survives; it's the most adaptive to change. And so we're through communicating in groups, like what we're doing here with you at home. Shout out to people, at home, all the lads together. That like learning and information feedback, etc. We can, you know, advance. But so many tangents. That children, like if you're gonna, it seems like children can absorb so much when they're young, because it's like, okay, where are we? Are we in the Namibian desert? Are we in the North Pole? Are we in the jungle? Are we in a famine, or are we in an age of abundance? Are we in a dense urban center, or are we in the middle of nature? And so children are so open and sponge-like, they absorb the environment, and then it kind of fossilizes and like locks in and consolidates around adolescence, and then they can kind of work with that and just specialize. Okay, we figured out our environment, now let's specialize and get really good at it. Which is kind of tricky with immigration, maybe, like things can move, like, but it's not that big a deal, I guess. But so I think, yeah, so you and children can learn languages generally, like when they're younger, like much more easily, they just absorb it. But do you think like that they didn't really have that when they were younger? That was more English when they were learning basic Irish, but, you know, not as well as you were, because you're in an Irish language school as a youngster. But do you think they were like better than, say, your ilk in general, like when they got to Closh Owen in the like secondary school?
At
Like,
Irish?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Like before they started?
No, after, like by the end, or do you just mean
by the end,
they caught
yeah.
up with you, or did they like, was there something about?
There's something
that they
there.
learnt
It's
it
very hard to
later?
put your finger on.
Yeah.
But it seems like they like, it wouldn't be the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Obviously, like in general, it seems like it might like a few theories I might have is that they might be more motivated,
Yeah.
considering it's a new language,
Yeah.
and because I've just been dripped Irish since I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
I was never. It was never like, oh my god, it's a new language. Do you know what I mean? I
Mm.
have to learn this brand new language all over
Yeah.
again, or just for the first time. It was kind of like I was just kind of drift fed it the whole way up,
Mm.
and maybe I don't know. It's very hard to put the finger. Like, there's no right answer here. Like,
Mm.
these like my mates that came from an English primary school, some of them did get better scores than me in Irish.
Mm-hmm. Some didn't.
Some didn't. Yeah, of course. Like, it's not like a guarantee just because you came from an English school you're gonna do better at Irish. But like, it seems to be something there.
So it seems more than 50%.
That does better.
Yeah. Or would you say
No,
it's
I'd say it's just.
Because that'd be surprising to me. I'd be, how did that?
It's not exactly a figure, Jamie. It's more just in general, people seem to be surprised at the fact that someone came from an English primary school can come in and do just as well as someone that's been speaking it for the last 6 years or 8 years even.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think potentially one thing like could be, say like when I was going from like primary school, what do you call it in Australia, like primary school to like high school or secondary school, I failed this test for the academic extension program. So I got put in like, the dummies class.
Really, yeah?
No, not dummies, but just in the normal class, right? And Mark, my twin, got put in the academic extension class.
There we go.
And so I was like,
there was a bit of that,
I was like, oh, Jesus, And then I think potentially that kind of put a fire under my ass kind of thing, or whatever the term is, and
spark something.
Yeah, got me to be like, kind of like,
hang the fuck on here.
Wake up, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I am more into like Mark's a great scholar, but like he's less into this sort of stuff than I'd be more academic in general, like he's he's very academic as well, but like it'd be kind of, it's more like he's like heart and I'm head or something.
Okay.
Or he's music and I'm words or something. And there's a lot of crossover, like for both of us, but I wonder like if that kind of thing triggered like an increased momentum where I wanted to work more, and I got used to that, and that they built this curiosity about learning. I wonder if a similar thing would happen to maybe people who like later on in life they didn't have that basis in Irish, and suddenly they're like, I guess that would happen to everyone to some extent when you're in an immersion school.
I wonder how I can tie this to the Irish language, Jamie, but that's interesting because I would say that I'm definitely not as academic as I am. What would you say the opposite of that is? Heartfelt, emotional intelligence, maybe.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
Intuitive.
Yeah. Kinda. Like I wouldn't be great at deal books now. But I tried very hard. And I did okay. But
oh, you're doing well in college, aren't you?
Exactly. Well, yeah, whatever. Like it's whatever.
But okay. So you.
Yeah, it's interesting that even though you're twins, one of you is slightly more academic and one of you is slightly more this, that, or the other. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting.
Oh yeah, that's all on a similar father.
Mm.
But to bring it back to Irish a bit, so yeah, so you were learning everything through Irish, and I think it's been shown that that's like a good way. Immersion's very effective at learning a language. So in the from what I understand, I'm going to tell you what I've heard about the mainstream government system for teaching the language.
Go on.
And you can tell me if I'm missing anything here or if it's wrong, right? From what you understand of your friends or whatever.
Yeah.
So they focus on grammar and kind of like poetry and old I think it said poetry and grammar a lot. Things like that where it's kind of like, oh, you need to know this, and it's kind of things where maybe it'd be interesting for the teachers because they can do it. It's kind of like these cool tricks they can do. Like, yeah, it works like this, da-da-da-da. But it's not like, that's not the way to learn a language. Apparently, they were never like, all right, everyone, you go in pairs. What I would do would be like, okay, put everyone in pairs or in threes. Start with pairs. Go, all right, talk about your weekend. What did you do?
That's Gaeilge.
Ask Gaeilge. Off you go. Or what do you like? Say if you're teaching an English class, simple things. And then the teacher just goes around in circles and jumps in. People, they could be using Irish and then say, okay, use English if you need to, but just try to limit it because you'll learn faster if you stick to Irish.
Yeah, we definitely done that in my French class.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a good method of teaching.
That is the modern method.
Yeah, yeah.
And as far as I understand, the Irish method is like this antiquated, anti-scientific. It's like it's contradicted by the current research of how to do it. Yeah, in the English schools.
The English schools,
And so they would be like, instead of being like communication based, it's meant to be all about communication. TTT, teacher talking time. That should be minimized. Teacher should be talking as little as possible. Should be maximum interaction between the students. For a language, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And and then you have them, okay, like you talk a bit about, all right, you draw a picture on the board. This is Susie. Susie's sad. Why is she sad, everyone? And get people to say problems. You write them on the board and you go, oh, okay, yeah. Now, what should she do? You know, what should we, and then someone, like if I'm doing English, I'm saying, get boyfriend, teacher. Okay, yeah, she should get a boyfriend. Good idea. You know, Anderson or whatever. And then, so he didn't say you should, but I'll write that up. And then through the context, then you do that and you go, oh, so maybe she should get a new job, she'd move town, or whatever. And then you isolate the grammar. You go, look what we did here together. Should, shouldn't. That means should. Is it a good idea or bad idea? Good. And use your face. So there's body language. Everyone understands body language. And so you're connecting, they connect the dots themselves with their inborn divine intelligence.
Yeah.
And you just facilitate it and they can start to go, oh, that's that. Yeah, okay, I get it. Bechordum, you know, I should. Okay, right? Bechordum ich, or bechor, how do you say she should eat? Oh, whatever, it doesn't matter. You know, get the idea, right? And so, and then you go, okay, bechorle, ich, capra, blaster, Bela. What's Bela? Emil. Bela. Okay, got him. Okay. So, Galore, Tomwich, Egolum. Yeah. Every day we're learning. So, and then, you know, you could isolate, okay, the form, the structure, pronunciation, Then you give them controlled practice. Here are some worksheets. Fill in this end of the sentence. Or there are errors in these sentences. Correct them. They go do that. And then you check everyone. Okay, you put them in pairs. And they use English to say, I think this. No, you think that. So they're also using communication just to try to figure out together who's right. And then finally you go freer practice where you're like, all right, now here are some questions on the board. What should you do but you're not doing? Oh, I should exercise, but I'm lazy, or whatever, you know, and then that's where it's personalized and it's becoming part of their soul and their personality, and they will remember it because it's part of their own story, and the narcissism kicks in, and to be, you know, joking, but like, facetious, but yeah, they can connect to themselves, and so from what I understand, that's the proven kind of basically standard communicative method for learning a language. And I think the Irish schools do that for Spanish, do it for French. They don't do it for Irish. They learn this grammar and it gets boring and people feel stupid because they can't do it, but it's actually the method's wrong. But then they get this shame and they get this anger and they're like, instead of being like, oh, I guess I'm just stupid, it's a bit easier on the self to go, you know what? No, I think this language is stupid.
Yeah.
I don't like this language. I don't even want to learn it.
Yeah.
And so this is this atrocious thing that the government seems to be killing the language, as far as I can tell.
And it would be very, you know, if you got my teacher from Closhdown and you put him in an English school, it would be very hard for him to have the patience because he's teaching at such a high level. It would be very hard to get a teacher like that that has such a good understanding of Irish history, put him into or put her into a English school and really try to spark the Irish into them. It would be quite hard, and that's why I think that, like, it would be it would be very hard to do that and maintain the structure to learn how to do the exam.
Right.
So it would nearly have to be two separate Irish classes they have in English schools, which would be one is for learning the exam and the other is for learning the language.
Or they just get rid of the exam. Who needs the exam?
Maybe, but yeah, that's the thing.
And
you know what's interesting?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
There's people in English schools that have gotten H1s, A1s in Irish,
Yeah.
and now they can't speak a word of it
Really?
because they've just learned it all. Even their oral exam,
Yeah.
just learned it off. And the examiner come in, they ask the same fucking
Yeah, yeah,
questions. What did you do today? What you doing the weekend? And they just learn that shit off.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
it goes out the window.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And yeah, and it, you know, it's got to be intrinsic motivation, not extrinsic. Like, I need this so I can get a good score. And
Yeah. But that's
and then that's another reason people resent it, because they feel like this is hard and I need it for my dreams. It's like Irish is in between me and my dreams. You know?
Yeah. Well, the biggest contrast I can put it down to between Irish and English schools and the way Irish is taught is if you're teaching Irish in the way that we've just explained that they do in English schools, they won't be able to create a sentence through Irish without the teacher giving them something to learn. So that's why they're not able to come out of the school.
They're not independent learners.
They're not actually. Whereas in Colourful and in most of the Irish schools, I'd say, they teach you how to create a sentence or create a poem or whatever, and actually like think in Irish.
Yes.
You're thinking.
Yeah.
You're not just. It's not there and you're learning it and then you're using that. It's coming from here and you're learning it and then bringing it out.
Could I give an example?
Go.
So I'm going to try to think in Irish.
Okay.
So I just say that in English. That's a thought. Okay, now I could just mirror that thought and translate into Be me ag Janav Iricht.
Yeah, very good.
Smuinov Gaeilge. Right? I'm going to try to think in Irish. So, but that's like mirroring it. So I'm not thinking in Irish, I'm thinking in English and then translating. And that's what slows people down often.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go dot to dot. What you do in English, dot to dot, 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 it's very, very fast though. I'm going to do it in Irish. I don't know whether the sentence is going to end.
Yeah.
One thing at a time. And then I say one thing. It's almost like you explore a map in a video game and it opens up a bit of the darkness around you. Oh, is that a tunnel there? Let's go that way. Oh, yeah. What's over here? Oh, there's a tunnel that way. Which way do I want to go? And so it's kind of like the thoughts kind of reveal a bit more of the map of meaning.
It's like when you're playing guitar, you just start fucking plucking around with it and something will come out eventually.
Yeah, and then this greater intelligence,
exactly.
Like the universe flows through you.
It'll just come true.
Marshin. So, here we go. Anish. Tá sé gehéintach a bheith leat.
Tá sé arás a bheith léir scoilge leatan seo inniu.
Arás sin é go dtíreach. Gehéintach. Agus tá buíoch agam. Agus
Tá buíochas.
Tá buíochas.
Well, yeah. Tá buíochas arm a bheith léir scoilge an seo. I'm grateful.
Yeah, tá.
Yeah.
Mar sin ach bhála mar rá smuoinm go bhfuil tú fér anhá féin siochána agus álan agus saoirse agus ceol agus crack agus peanta. Anish, okay, that's enough, I'd say.
Yeah.
So obviously I'm speaking slowly. I was basically saying, oh, you know, this guy's a champ, you know, he's great.
Yeah.
But one thing leads to another, and your mind can kind of connect the dots. But it's really fun. It's like a little. It's like
you can just go
game.
off on one.
Yeah.
And see what comes.
And that speeds up over time.
Like you did with that poem that you done there.
Yeah.
A little while
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
It just comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just comes out
I
like
haven't
Tom
practiced that in a
Cruise
while.
from the cupboard.
I'm gonna practice that more, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, just coming up with something.
Yeah, and I do this. Here's the big thing. People are like, oh, big problem is like, who's there to practice with? Like you and all your mates from this Closh-Owen, right? Closh-Owen.
Yeah.
You're like, you said to me, yeah, but the thing is, there's no one to speak with. So you got the fluency, but then you start getting rusty because you're like, no one in this society is speaking it. So it's difficult.
Yeah.
The thing is, and I think because I'm an outsider, I'm very fortunate. I think that I was born and raised in Australia, but like all my family's Irish, you know, and been like, you know, freaking here forever, whatever. But that I'm close enough to be obsessed and to have grown obsessed with my roots and this beautiful island and its people. But I dodged I have this outside perspective. Also, Australian culture in general is less worried about, and I definitely have I'm half Australian, you know, that's part of me, you know, and I'm happy about that, you know, like, but I'd say the Irish, you know, no disrespect to Australia,
The
very
Irish
grateful.
part of you
The Irish
is-
part's deeper.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really.
Well, I mean, it only makes sense, doesn't it?
I think it's always been calling you
Um,
since you found out.
when I was a little kid, I don't think so. But it was always interesting. Like, I came here when I was 12, and I was like, this place is incredibly beautiful. This place is so green, and like, oh my God, I love it. And I never really liked the kind of arid kind of nature of Western Australia. I mean, I've come to appreciate there's a certain beauty to it, but I'm more drawn to the Irish thing, and like for various things, like I'm pale, and so it's like the you know the weather here is more suitable to me.
Exactly.
But there's all these things. But like but the Australian culture is more like direct. Irish people are a bit more like concerned about being polite than honest, you know. Which is just, and it's like friends.
Ah, there's a beautiful honesty though in some Irish.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Some Irish people are very direct as well.
Yeah, very direct. And
some fingless.
but they do, yeah.
Come here.
But they do it in a
Same.
very like in a very, I don't know, what would you say, light-hearted way.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes a bit
Yeah.
subtle.
Yeah,
subtle
very
digs.
subtle. Yeah,
Calling each
subtle
other
digs.
Ted.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Keeping each other honest.
Yeah.
But like, so like that Australian culture growing up being like, you can do what you want, basically, if you're not hurting other people. You know, there's a lot pretty strong conservative streak and like authoritarian streak, as we've seen in Australia. Of like, so, oh, we descended from convicts. Yeah, but the government and all the institutions of education and power are descended from the jailers. So, you know, but nonetheless, like, I think I've been able to come here and kind of be like, oh, I'm just going to learn this and just speak it,
Yeah.
you know. But what I was going to say though, like, what I've realized, and I did this with French, right? Like, you know, I was in Montreal, and people would just speak back to me in English because they're all, you know, bilingual. And so, but I was like, well, I want to learn French, so I'm just gonna, you can keep speaking back to me. Some people get disheartened, like, okay, I guess my French isn't good enough. I'll just speak English to them. Or I'd be like, I'll just keep speaking to them in French, and like they can keep speaking English if they want.
Yeah.
Maybe they want to practice, or usually they would go back to French, even though, you know, maybe I'm a bit clumsy with my French.
Yeah.
And just through cafes, interactions, and I was improving, and I would do that. I would talk to myself in French, and so I'd be improving that way.
That's funny.
And that's the thing in Irish. We can all talk to ourselves.
This is, yeah.
And there's always someone to talk to.
I was quite sad. This is me reflecting on it, but there is a bit of a sadness in the fact that I don't think I'll ever have, like, when let's say for example, getting given out for doing something, you know, whatever in Caution, if you've done something wrong and something like, you know, something stupid, you know,
Yeah.
throwing paper airplanes around, something like
Yeah.
that. And you know, the moment of a teacher about to give out to you, I was definitely thinking like the thoughts of, like, you know, if it happened in English life, do you know what I mean? It would be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Panic.
Yeah.
I was panicking in Irish.
Whoa, you were thinking in Irish.
Yeah, like I was thinking, oh no, cut that chicken raw. Oh, you know,
That's crazy.
do you know what I mean? And I don't think I'll ever have that again.
Really?
Never. You'll never have. I'll never, because it
What
was.
if I
It
got
was just
scarier?
Yeah, but it was just so. It was so
Bruh.
embedded in us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was so, like, when
Well,
I was in
I
Caution,
think you could
I
get
was
back there for
just
sure.
Irish. Do you know what I mean? That was my main language day to day.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, if you get very happy, you'd be just thinking in Irish, you know,
Yeah.
oh, that was great, whatever. But you think of it in Irish, do you know what I mean? Or like,
Yeah.
oh, that girl's really fit, you know. I'd put it in my head, be like, oh, it's Colleen Ollie, or kind of whatever,
yeah.
like, do you know what I mean? A bit of that,
God,
like, I'm not
man.
saying that it was always
Colleen
like that,
Ollie.
but there's obviously times where you'd be thinking in English in school, because whatever, it just happens. But yeah, it was like
Thinking
definitely
in English as a teenager would be like getting a boner. You're like no,
Yeah,
body,
yeah,
no.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
the brain
yeah,
of like
yeah.
teenage boy. That was like the English thoughts creeping
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
get out of here.
Yeah,
Quick,
yeah,
quick.
yeah. That's
I
cool.
understand, Anish. Yeah, but I think, man, like, everyone, one of the big things, I think that would like probably like solve a lot of problems in the world, is if we could learn to, basically all the problems come from the mind, I think, the human mind, you know? And so the root of evil isn't money. Money in the hands of a good person or a wise person makes the world better. In the hands of a person who isn't wise, or an unconscious person, you could say, spiritually, makes things worse. So the mind, or your state of consciousness, is the root of all, goodness or evil, or problems, whatever you want to call it. But the essence is being able to empty your mind, or being able to be the witness of your mind.
Yeah.
Basically, being able to be that empty space of consciousness.
Get out of your mind's head. Get out of your own. Get out of your own way, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And let your
And
without getting too techie spiritually with it, but like it's true.
Yeah, like you can here are the thoughts. Here am I observing the thoughts. Where if I'm the thoughts, how can I be observing the thought?
Yeah.
And then, okay, that's interesting. And then maybe you could try to explain that away. But then you meditate, and if you do it properly, all the thoughts disappear completely. But most people, you don't need to do that. You just get demoralize yourself. That's not the aim. The aim is just to watch the thoughts, and you'll notice space. It'll start to slow down, and more space will open up around and in between the thoughts, which is very relaxing. It's amazing, really fun. And then even behind the thoughts, you will still sense that silence and that space, that stillness. Even when there are thoughts, it's always there behind. And so we're always thinking, we're always talking to ourselves with this inner voice in our head, constant, And for a lot of people, it's like a torturer, it's a tyrant. You can turn that voice into Irish and just start talking to yourself, and that will be good for your soul's evolution.
Yeah, that's it.
It's going to slow down the thoughts and make it more conscious.
Easier said than done, lad.
Definitely.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, well,
it's very hard to get to that stage where you're just
especially when the British Empire is so down on us.
I know, you know what I mean? Queen Lizzie.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think it's just, it is a challenge, sure, but I think you can get back to that state. I've no doubt you could get there if you wanted it. If you had a burning desire.
Yeah, if I had a burning desire.
You just talk to yourself.
But I don't know if I do.
Yeah. What's so great about talking to yourself in English?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't talk to myself much in English, I suppose. But
yourself talks to you in English.
Yeah, exactly. Me and my alter ego.
Yeah.
No, but there's nothing great about it. It was just there was nothing great about the English thing, because that's just whatever. But it was, looking back now, it was definitely cool. That it was happening in Irish. Do you know what I mean? Like you just went somewhere so different with it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real earthy.
Very earthy.
Very downach.
Downach.
Well, downach would be actually brown, the colour brown. But like, this is a little slang that we're going to make.
Worldly.
Up. Yeah. We're making a new Irish language, will we, man?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's like
which is part of it.
In my book, Saoirse, right? It's like, I think I told you, right?
Yeah.
But like, there's this global dictatorship which takes over the world, and the Irish start using Gaeilge again as a code language, because these tyrants don't know how to use it, and there's very few people who are going to tell them how to use it, and they start getting taken out by the Irish. You're like, oh, this snake in the grass. And then the Irish start changing the language. They bend the rules. They create new words, and so they can't keep up. And so the language starts evolving again.
We have to evolve the language. If we're you can't.
We can evolve it.
We have to. Well, we're not going to learn Irish the way it was spoken 10 years ago. Even that short long. Like, we have to, especially in this new era that you're on about.
Yeah.
If we're going into a new era of trying to bring Irish back, it needs to change.
Definitely. I think we need to wear robes, like start a cult, wear robes. Like, you have to wear brogues, brogues and white robes, like the Druids. And you can do that in the city. You can be an accountant in your white robes and look like a robes. Yeah, everyone's gonna love it, But no, yeah, definitely. I think the language, and like the accents would change. I might never get like a full on the ability to have like I can put on an Irish accent to some extent. It's not that good, but and so I can do that when I'm speaking Irish. But I'll probably never sound like anyone who's locally here.
I think it's cool if you spoke Irish in your Australian accent.
Yeah, that's what's going to say. Yeah.
You're a man of the world, Jamie.
Táisé Gahinta.
Yeah.
Mar Galore, mate.
Yeah. I love that.
Sinead Girach.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So, all right. So we talked about, Yeah. So how many people using it daily though? The language, because we haven't talked about with languages now, but basically it's not in, tip top shape. But um, basically, I think, I think understatement. Um, I think something. I'll double check this here, but I think it's something like between 1% and 3%, maybe 5%.
And I haven't met.
Speak it daily outside of the education
Yeah,
system. Probably 1%.
I
I
haven't
think.
met anyone really.
Yeah.
I don't think like I can. Maybe. Yeah, like you meet people that when you meet, you probably have met these people,
Yeah.
but you don't know maybe because
They might be just talking to themselves
yeah.
every day.
Well, they want to be in their little bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they're not open to speaking Irish to
Yeah.
people that don't understand what they're saying because where like it's hard to converse when someone's always trying to stop you and trying to understand what you're
True,
saying.
and like patience, but
Patience,
like, look,
like people just like
I love the language, but I don't love waiting around for dummies to try to respond.
Exactly. Like you're not signing up to be a fucking like learning Irish and being fluent in Irish. Like if you're lucky to be fluent at Irish now, that shouldn't mean that you're expected to have this patience with everyone. You have the language. You're lucky to have it. You can just keep it for yourself. And your little bubble. Yeah.
I think again, it's freedom. It should all be voluntary. If you're called to share.
And if we want, like these are these people that can speak that Irish. They are the high kings of the language.
Yep.
And we can't be dragging them down into our. We need to build our way up to that.
Absolutely, we need to make ourselves worthy of
exactly.
The engagement by the high wizards.
Exactly. If we're getting a bit medieval with it,
yeah.
It's interesting that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think there might be a bit more to be. Okay, so two things. On the social dynamic side, I think there's a few more dynamics to mention. But first, just where it's at. So I think maybe you reckon something like maybe 20-25% of people could speak it or speak it in education.
Yeah, well, like it could have a go at it.
Yeah, I wonder. Let's see.
I have no idea.
Good old Wikipedia says. So in April 2016, 1.7 million people in the Republic, that's out of like, I guess it'd be out of 5 million at that time or something, claimed that they could speak Irish.
Claim. That's such a...
Because the thing is,
I wouldn't mind that at all. Like,
well, but here's the thing. When people fill out surveys, some people are like, I like the idea of being able to speak it, and they might write it. Do you think people would not, like, some people... I think
people would definitely...
Be honest about it?
No. I think people would definitely say...
Overstate their ability? Or?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So that's what this is saying, I think.
I'd say that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
I'd say it's less. 1.7 million can speak Irish.
Yeah.
I'd say your Irish would be better than most of the people that are saying that.
Most people who can speak Irish, who talk to me, and people who can't, like, will say that. They'll be like, your Irish is better than most Irish people.
Yeah.
And I don't care. Like, I'm not, I would just have nothing but, like, I'll just be losing respect for myself if I was using it as some sort of badge of honor.
Yeah,
you know, because that's not what it's all about.
Because that's as you said, the language isn't in top shape, so it's not like you're.
I'm just having fun with it, but yeah, it does seem like I don't know about those numbers. So that would be 40% of respondents. But in Northern Ireland, 100,000 out of 1.8 million claimed it in 2018.
I can't see that.
Yeah.
I can't see that.
I think in there there'd be a lot of nationalists being like, yeah, I've got
exactly.
Irish tá cúpla focail a get. I mean,
it depends. It depends on how you define speaking the language.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, it's even if people are claiming that's good in a way that they want to. But like it's kind of can be like a bit of a crutch, or like you get the pleasant feeling. Yeah, I speak a bit of Irish, and you're not even putting in.
Spoke of it before, where people are like, I hate Britain. That's the only connection I have to Irish. They might just be saying that.
What I was going to say about that before is that I think some people, it's a fragile sense of identity. People who don't know who they are and what they stand for, they strengthen their sense of self by creating an other.
Yeah. And
that's just a shortcut to trying to make yourself seem more.
It's pure laziness, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pure laziness.
Yeah. It has been found, however, that while ideological support for Irish is high, actual routine use is very low. There's no correlation between personal fluency. Okay. Yeah. So, and there are, a lot of government organizations ostensibly trying to help the language, but I don't know how much good they're doing it. You'd think it'd be better if you said, we're going to resign in protest unless you make communicative practice the core of the curriculum. by the way, a practical thing is one possible solution to this thing is you have a lot of say primary school teachers or high school teachers or whatever who they're teaching math, especially primary school. They're teaching all these different subjects: mathematics, history, and they have to learn Irish. And some of them, I know one who had to do an extra year or maybe even 2 years. I think maybe 1 year, getting her Irish up to scratch so she could become a primary school teacher.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Now she's probably not going to be well disposed to enjoy teaching the language. She might even be getting annoyed at the language because it's holding it back. And a lot of them, so you get these people who maybe aren't really that fluent at it, and when the kids should be learning it, and along with English as they're growing up, they're not. So what I think at primary school, what could be good is just like you have this dedicated Spanish teacher, a dedicated French teacher, have dedicated Irish professionals who are completely fluent and very good at connecting with people and making it interesting, like you had at Colourful, and they, every day they just go and visit different schools and go to different, teach the class, and then the primary school teachers can have a load off their minds. They don't have to worry about it.
They can just
they can use Irish in their classes a bit if they want. Use it, but and that would be good. And then in high school, same thing, making sure there's very qualified teachers. But yeah, that'd be one thing. I don't know why they don't do that in primary school.
What I don't understand is it seems that I would say that the most important time would be like your first few years in Closhdown or in high school, as you would say. That's the time to drill it in.
Yeah.
That's the time to get them passionate about it.
Yeah. That's when your new identity is forming.
Exactly.
You're individuating yourself from the
And what's weird is what they do in some, they would put, in English schools, they definitely put new teachers that probably don't have that good Irish in with the new guys.
With the new
students.
Right. Really?
That would definitely be a thing.
Because they're less aware of them.
Well, they're just not
mistakes, maybe.
Yeah. Well, probably not. They probably just think it's not as important to get it into them now than it is to when the exams are coming. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mad. Yeah. So let's see. I think there might be some. Does it mention claim number of Irish speakers? So 25% or ish said they never used the language. 30% ish said they spoke it within the education system. 6% claimed they spoke it weekly. Here we go. Daily speakers outside the education system numbered only 73,000. That's 1.7% of the population, and they may be inflated by people claiming it. So that's 1.7%.
Let's call it 1.
Yeah, let's call it 1.
Let's call it 1 max.
What's the harm? Get us to work a bit harder, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No harm
1% of people in Ireland can speak Irish. Is that what's it saying there?
Yeah.
Is that taken into account people that speak it fluently?
Yeah.
Or is it just some bullshit survey?
Using it outside of the education system, they might thing is in the survey, a recent census rep, I said it's kind of interesting. It's fluency in Irish, no. Use it outside of the education system daily.
There's a bit, but there's a bit to that. I would definitely say if two teachers from Closhdown went out for coffee, they might be speaking Irish, but that's not relevant to this survey because, they're speaking it outside of the school, but for the fact that they're actually in the school is the only reason them two people would come together and speak Irish.
Right. Yeah. There are a lot of informal groups that there's people with coffee meetups and just speak Irish. There's a lot of grassroots movements to use the language and revive the language. Thanks, man. And there's these pop-up Gaeilge things which are amazing. If there's any Irish people out there, Fulcher and
meet you at the Conra.
Yeah, Conra. Gaeilge, it's great.
Seriously,
you need to go there.
Yeah,
haven't been there in
ages.
ages.
You should go there a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. But these pop-up Gaeilge things are amazing. Where on the last Thursday of every month,
I know
different pubs, you go there and everyone just goes there and speaks Irish. Good for the
so
pubs.
Cool. I haven't been to one yet.
I met really never.
Yeah.
I've been to a bunch. I met some random cool people. Yeah,
I just go there. A few people I know, man.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just just go have a Guinness. There's a lot of people floating around that want to talk to people.
It's class.
Yeah,
it's class. That's so cool.
And then there's I have this kind of crew of people, not our generation, a bit before, but I guess 40s, most of them 40s, 50s, 60s kind of thing, from Bayside, where one of my grandmas lives, right?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, near Hoth, and so I doing like a lot of time like on Zoom. We do these Irish language things, and there's physical meetups. Like they're having one this Friday, I think, in the tavern, and that's all over. There's one in like Raheny. There's one in like I think Kilbarrack. So these are starting to grow. Like so that's pretty cool. Yeah, the Wikipedia also just says not the most trustworthy source, but hey, in this case, why not? Probably
We'll take it.
we'll take it. Sure. It's saying like 1% of customers using their ATMs use it in Irish.
Oh,
So that kind of links up.
That's I would love to see the data from the ATMs.
Yeah.
If they could do it, because I guarantee that's a lot.
I'd like to see their passwords.
Yeah.
Pins.
Yeah.
So right. So that's kind of more or less, I guess, the present state of the language. So the future, I guess we kind of talked about, hey, like hopes for like, I think one thing, yeah, I kind of feel like whatever happens will be right, and nothing lasts forever, except for nothing, which happens to be infinity, I think. So I think consciousness lasts forever, I think, but.
Sorry, what is that? What would that be? So one in every how many people you would meet on the street would speak Irish?
Apparently 1 in 100 speak it out. Just something. That's pretty cool. Because the thing is, they tried so hard to get rid of the language.
So
800
do you
years.
think we went outside and
didn't
spoke
manage
to
it.
100 people? One of them.
I think so.
Really? We got to do it.
Yeah. Like cafes and stuff. I'll talk to people who speak it. I'll be like, go market, and then some of them, most of them, won't even say Fulcher Roads, which is crazy. But some will, and we're cool. And then but then there's some who would be like, oh yeah, well, good, and like then some of them I'll be like, every time I go back, I talk to them in Irish, and we talk to each other, So you put yourself out there. You don't be afraid of looking stupid. Just do it, and you give other people the permission to start doing that themselves.
Yeah.
And they might even start doing it, not even just with you, but with other strangers. And it can spread.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And so on the side of the social dynamics there, what else? So there's people feeling afraid to use it, people feeling guilty, like, I know I should know it because it's my ancestral language, but there's people feeling inadequate, like stupid, I guess I said.
I'd say there's a lot of people feeling frustrated as well, that they can't speak it. And then, it's how far they're going to get frustrated to the point that they're going to be like, fuck, I'm going to learn it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can definitely sense frustration. Even like my dad, like he wants to speak it. You can tell he really wish he could go out there and be amongst a lot and have a few pints and speak some Irish.
Yeah.
But it's so tough, especially at that age, for people to get the motivation to go and learn it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it needs to come from the young people. It needs to start with us.
Oh, you just start talking to them and
Might do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A while later,
Yeah.
to Guinness. So yeah.
It's a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a way of life.
Yeah, indeed. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
And and it's cool. It's fun, and it's like, it's also a good way just for, I think, it makes you sharper, like, being able to learn these things and thinking with two different brains, two different neural networks, I think is good for you. In general, it seems like bilingualism is good for the brain, and people from like schools like yours on average have higher scores than normal schools.
Absolutely.
And there's a theory that is because of the bilingual element is like kind of a gym for the brain, a workout for the brain.
Exactly. Yeah, that's cool actually.
Yeah. And also when you've got more than one language, you can kind of think conceptually. So you don't just think, racism, this, that. You say, well, you might go, well, you know what, you say racism, but in, like in other languages, there's a different word for that. So these are just labels trying to point at phenomena. The word itself is not the thing. So I think, and so it might make you aware that, well, one person thinks racism is, you might have a different meaning of racism. And so you can kind of become more aware, savvy about, what's your definition of racism? Oh, what do you mean? It's just, what do you mean? Tell me it using other words. But, okay, well, I actually agree with you with that. But what I'm saying is that I think what I can call racism is a different thing. And you can help you have better conversations and understand each other. That's another thing that language awareness can do for you. So I think if Ireland can become bilingual, I think it's going to be an incredible success story. It's going to blow the minds of the whole freaking planet.
Do you think so? Yeah.
Oh man, can you imagine?
Should be like, yeah.
Because Ireland's a big tourist destination. People come here like, oh my god, like I came here 10 years ago and no one was speaking the language. Cool. This is wild. Other countries, the Catalan or whatever, they would get inspired.
It might spark
in Scotland or whatever.
So cool. Like we are restricting ourselves to, we're closing ourselves off by having English as, the language of the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
You are closing a lot off to opportunities.
And on that point, to give the devil his due, the other side of it, keep it balanced. There's a great benefit to us in using English, and we're amazingly blessed to have English. That we can connect with so many people, we can travel, it's easy. And English is such a beautiful thing, and so we shouldn't be bashing English.
No, I'm not bashing it.
Yeah,
I'm not bashing it. I'm getting onto the fact that like we have the English. We have it now. We have a slate where we can all communicate. Let's get back into our roots.
Yeah, and like not be like resting on our laurels, like, oh, you're lazy. Like, yeah, we got the English or whatever. It's like the English is beautiful, but there's this other thing. There's so much potential in Irish, and apart from everything else, I think going through individually and potentially collectively, if everyone else starts doing it, starting with yourself, me first, you first, if you want to do it, If you don't want to do it, then cool. Ceart Galore, ní fáidir bith. Fiber bit, no problem. But if we then individually and collectively, that's going to have all these other flow and benefits of like, oh, we did it. Yes. What else can we do? Oh, we can do this. We can get rid of corruption. We can deal with that. We can take care of our health better. We can take care of the nature better.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, baby.
Baby steps, baby.
Yeah.
I like it.
And so are you optimistic about the future of the language? What do you think?
You've given me optimism, Jamie.
Touch it on it. Yes.
You've given me some optimism, but if it wasn't for you, I think I would definitely just, go into this. Like, I definitely think that I would definitely leave the Irish behind.
Really?
At some stage. I think I'd always have it, but I think it takes people like you and people that are passionate to keep people like myself who have had the pleasure of speaking it. Keep us intact.
Yeah.
Keep us here.
Yeah.
Not let us, go into the myths of English culture too much.
Yeah, or like the myths that it's all extinct, it's all over, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's
very
well,
easy
if you want it
to
to
get
be
into that mindset.
Yeah,
very easy.
You're a great inspiration, I gotta say as well. Like, oh my god, like you speak great. That like really, and you help me out like things like, oh, how do you say that? How do you say that? Texting and Irish and stuff.
It's great crack.
Great crack.
Yeah.
Another thing is like, just text people in Irish, and mix it in with English and Irish.
Yeah.
I do it all the time. I say something, I don't know one word in Irish, so I just say it in English. And it's, mix. That's better than nothing, and over time, the percentage of Irish increases. And using Google Translate and stuff. I know it's like Gaeilge Vrishta, it's broken Irish, but better than nothing. And I'm at least gaining vocabulary, even if it's all wonky.
Baby steps, son.
And, indeed.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah? We start a movement.
Oh, yeah. Well, movement starts itself, more or less,
Exactly.
I think. But one thing I wanted to say, I think, yeah. Oh, no, I guess that was it. That, you can, there was something. What was it?
Well, we've got it. We've covered a lot of angles.
Covered a lot of ground, Harry.
We've covered a lot of ground. What have we covered? We've got some insight into my knowledge of how the Irish. Is that what you were getting at?
No, but your confident vibe brought it spiraling back to me. Thank you. One possibility is to make Irish voluntary as a subject, not compulsory. Because think about people say
it's not voluntary.
I know to make it voluntary.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. What you could do in the government school, say Irish is optional. You don't have to do it. And some people say, oh, but then people will stop it, which might happen temporarily because people are alienated. But then I think overall people would be like, well, if you want to do something, don't touch the cookie jar. You want to get the cookie. Yeah. So if you force people to do that, they don't like it, So, and it's not Irish. We're all about freedom. What the hell? Why are we forcing,
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If it was voluntary to learn Irish and it was all up in the hands of the people and there was no force or coercion involved, just freedom. If we, the people of Ireland, didn't keep that flame up, burning, if we let that die, would we not deserve that? And would that not be the right and best of ends? And would that not be some
Destiny.
feedback, you know?
That'd
Like,
be
that's the way it should
destiny
be.
of the language.
And we both know that would never happen.
Yeah. No, you're dead right there.
Yeah.
If we both know the destiny of Irish isn't to die,
Indeed.
but if we allow ourselves to do it voluntarily, as you said, like as we said, like you can't force someone to try.
Yeah.
You have to just, it has to come. People will notice.
Yeah.
People will start to realize
Yeah.
the special feeling and special times you can have, like me and Jamie coming over and learning the language have brought us together a bit.
Yeah.
Not to get to whatever with it, but it lets us have some sort of common ground.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
and like people will find common ground with
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
The fact that they're Irish, that
That
they
you're
should
doing
be
something
speaking the
together.
language.
A joint purpose. Absolutely. It's all about freedom. Freedom's contagious.
Mm.
Get it into you.
Get it into your son.
All right. We done?
Good stuff.
Go to me, Lamahagad.
Get the Irish into you, lads.
Shake your hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Peace out.
Slán Awalia.
Slán Awalia.
All right.
Go on. Good stuff. Let's go get a pint.
Yeah.